drying up and clearing off as the week goes along, but right now it is 59 and cloudy at ESPN Radio and sunny 95.3.
And we'd like to thank Chief Bauer for giving us our weather forecast this morning as you save up to $1,700 on a qualifying new AC and heating system and reduce energy bills by up to 50%. Call Chief Bauer service experts at 866-EXPERTS or visit chiefbauer.com. Hope your morning's going well. It is 8:06. We have a special guest that's calling in from New York, and his name is Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. And, of course, with the 5 terrorists swapped out for our U.S. soldier, I'll be asking him a question about that and his feelings on that. We were visiting with some local soldiers about their opinion, and a lot of people just not happy with what the president did without the Congress approval. And, of course, his recommendations for handling of the Veterans Administration and hospital care for our soldiers. So Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North is coming up. Decorated U.S. Marine, #1 best-selling author, founder of a small business, inventor with 3 U.S. patents, a syndicated columnist, and host of War Stories on Fox News Channel. He was born in San Antonio, Texas, graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in Maryland, and served 22 years as a Marine officer. His awards for service in combat include a Silver Star, a Bronze Star of Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts for his wounds in action. So we welcome Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who was on the national security staff of the Reagan administration and the United States government's counterterrorism coordinator from 1983 to 1986, involved in planning rescue of 804 medical students on the island of Grenada. I mean, the list goes on and on with Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North joining us on the air right now. How are you this morning?
And it's great to be with you and great to be with your listeners out there in the heartland of America.
Thank you for your service to our country first and foremost. We love that.
Well, you're kind. You just mentioned the medical students. I just came back a few days ago from Normandy. I was out there with a 94-year-old paratrooper who'd parachuted in on the day before D-Day, on the 5th of June 1944. His son-in-law was one of those medical students from Grenada. Small world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was a graduate in the 80s, so I was really keeping up and really praying for you in all those hot times. And I just want to thank you so much for getting us through so many troubled times. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North has a book coming out called Counterfeit Lies. Tell us about it.
Well, first, thank you for the prayers. I'm proof they're answered. So, Counterfeit Lies. It's about, a hostage situation that goes awry and is something other than what it seems to be. It's about terrorists in America. It's about threats from overseas. It's about a defector who helps our adversaries, about Iranian nuclear, sound familiar? Iranian nuclear weapons, North Korea. Yeah. It is literally a book for current events. And no, the title is not necessarily to do with the administration.
I see. FBI undercover agent Bob Hammer worked on this with you?
Yes, Bob and I have been friends for years. We've worked together on other books, to include the Last American Heroes nonfiction book. We were in the midst of working on that. I was on my way to Israel, and I was talking to some of my friends over there, and they told me the story that is the heart of the story here, the novel. And I said, this is what we're going to do. So he and I worked together on it furiously, got it together in time for the publisher to get it out just in time for Father's Day.
Well, you did so well as a New York Times bestseller with Heroes Proved. It's not a continuing story from that.
Well, Peter Newman is part of all of those books, because Peter Newman, and no, I'm not Peter Newman. He's younger and better looking. But Peter Newman's a Marine. Peter Newman is the kind of guy that everybody would like to have as a person to turn to in the midst of bad things happening. And he is part of this story as well. And it really is about those kinds of things I was just talking about. Right. It's about hostages and things that aren't what they seem to be. And ultimately, the ultimate moral question, how do you do the right thing when everything else around you seems bad, wrong?
Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North visiting with us on ESPN 93.5 and Sunny 95.3. Your timing is great for this book, due out for tomorrow. Our fellow Americans are looking for answers. There's so many military headlines these days.
Yeah.
Can I ask your opinion about how you feel about the 5 terrorists being switched out for an American soldier who could possibly be a deserter?
Look, I had to go negotiate for Americans. I had to figure out what the bad guys wanted and figure out how we could get them back. So I know that it's a difficult thing. And there's nothing, well, I shouldn't say there's nothing. There are few things worse in life than having to negotiate the price of an American to get them free. So I understand that part. What bothers me about this whole thing, Dan, is the way this thing came down, because I know that Bo Bergdahl was never held by the Taliban. The people who held him were the Haqqani criminal network, which is kind of like, if you will, the Sopranos on steroids. The Haqqanis and the Taliban interact. Usually it's a gunfight between them. And how these 5 super top-tier terrorists from the Taliban got inserted into this is beyond me, because the Haqqanis could care less about these guys. So my guess is, and I don't know this for certain, but someone in this administration saw this as a, quote, big win-win. And, of course, it's a disaster for the country. Now, I still want to know, was a ransom paid? Because I know the price that was wanted. And if it was paid, to whom was it given? And whose money was it? And how much was it? I mean, we deserve those answers. And for Sergeant Bergdahl and his family and his friends, they deserve justice, and we deserve justice. How do we get that? There's a military equivalent of a grand jury called an Article 32 investigation. Some senior Army general with, if you will, moxie, I'll put it gently, because we've got nice people that listen to your show, needs to stand up on his hind feet and convene an Article 32 investigation. Put everybody who knows anything under oath and get it out there. That's the way it's done. It's the right way to do it. And they know that. So somebody has got to avoid the political correctness of this Pentagon and the hierarchy in Washington and do the right thing by Sergeant Bergdahl, by his family, by his fellow soldiers, by you and me and the American people. And they need to do it now.
You know, what seems interesting about this situation, I want to get your take on this, is one thing that I've kind of had a hard time sifting through are stories coming out about Bo Bergdahl himself, and obviously there are certain things in his past and certain things in his military service that would raise a few eyebrows. But nonetheless, from your perspective, being a veteran yourself, does it make you a bit uncomfortable to see a fellow military veteran come under this level of scrutiny when really, as you made the point, this is much more to do with the negotiations and with the government than it really is with this one individual?
Well, but I still think, Mike, that Article 32, which has to do with the individual, the behavior of this individual, needs to be investigated, needs to have that come to clarity and a conclusion. Otherwise, it's going to, how is this kid ever going to possibly live back here in this country? And so what I'm saying is justice. You know, justice can be done for you, as it was in my case. Justice can be done to you, and you could be sitting in prison for a long time. What I'm suggesting is that Article 32 investigation would bring that out. A decision would then be made about a court-martial. And I know that there's a lot of people who have questions about military justice. When I was indicted by the special prosecutor in 1988, I asked for a court-martial. And the reason that special prosecutor wouldn't let me have one is he knew that justice would be done. He knew that a jury of my peers would not convict me. And so he wanted me to go before a jury in Washington, D.C., in which there was one person who had a high school diploma. Now, that's a long time ago, but what I'm saying is justice for Bo Bergdahl, his comrades in arms, the American people, is an Article 32 that may lead to a general court-martial. And it's going to take some general who's got some courage and tenacity to stand aside from the political correctness and convene that kind of investigation.
Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North with us on ESPN 93.5 and Sunny 95.3. Recommendations for handling the VA scandal.
Boy, well, you got to find, you know what, and forgive me for putting it this way, we need a Secretary of the Veterans Administration who gives a damn, and we need him to have access to the President of the United States. I asked this question to my Fox News colleagues when they were trying to interview General Shinseki, or Rick, as Commander-in-Chief called him. How many times did he have a private meeting with the Commander-in-Chief, the head of state, chief executive? I don't think he ever did. Right. I don't think he ever got in the door to say, hey, look, here's the list of problems. I got 45 hospitals that are dummying the books, lying about people getting treatment, and veterans are dying. And it's going to come back to haunt you, Mr. President, if you don't get on with it. That never happened. And so you need somebody there who gives a damn. On Capitol Hill, there are two committees of Congress, three actually, that have authority over funding and activity in the Veterans Administration. We need members of Congress in both parties, in both houses, who stand up and do the right thing by our veterans. Don't just throw money at the problem. Exercise real oversight. How many times have these guys been in veterans hospitals? I mean, I know McCain has, but there's darn few others who have ever even visited one. And if they'd gone as a patient, they'd know the problems I had when I had cancer and couldn't even get a hearing, couldn't even get to see a doctor. Was told it would be 6 months. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the Fox News medical plan. And so my point is, get somebody in office at the VA and get somebody up on Capitol Hill in the committees who will take on this issue and have a president who really does give a damn. That's easy.
How did it get to this point? Because I had a grandfather that was in World War II, and the VA, I mean, I remember early 90s, little stories he would tell about, already back then it was kind of a joke in the way that certain VA hospitals were ran. How did it get to this point? Because it seems like, Americans are very good at speaking about how much we care for our veterans, but then when it comes down to the actual nuts and bolts of it, there leaves a lot to be desired.
The short answer to how it got to be where it is. First of all, when I was a kid growing up, almost every postal service person I knew, the person who ran the post office, the letter carriers, all of them were veterans. Why was that? Because the Postal Service was told by Harry Truman, you will hire veterans. This president could do that by executive order tomorrow. And you know what? Veterans care for one another. They don't just sit on their duff and whine about it. They do things. So this president tomorrow could issue, God knows he's used his executive authority in ways that I never thought a president could. He could do this easily. All he has to do is write an order that says, from today onward, everyone hired by the VA must be a veteran of the Armed Forces of the United States, and boom, things would start to get fixed. But, of course, nobody really cares.
What a terrific conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and good luck on Counterfeit Lies.
Thank you. OliverNorth.com for signed copies in time for Father's Day.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, gang.
You take care.
Look forward to seeing you.
ESPN 93.5 and Sunny 95.3. I got goosebumps. I think we did okay, Mike.
I think so. Well done.